Okay, this is Algebra 1, test number 2, study guide. Number 1 tells you to identify the fraction equivalent to 2 over 7. So if you multiply 2 by 4, for example, if you compare it to A, you multiply it by 4, you get the number 8. If you multiply 7 by the same number 4, you're going to get 28. So A is actually going to be the correct answer, just like on test number 1. If you check B, you have to multiply by 2 to get 2 by 4 to get 8, but when you multiply 7 by 4, you don't get 21, so that's why B doesn't work. If you check C, when you multiply 2 by the number 3, you get the number 6 here. When you multiply 7 by 3, you don't get the number 28. And then when you check the last one, D, in order to get 10, you have to multiply 2 by the number 5. But when you multiply 7 by 5, you don't get 28. So A is the correct answer. Number 2 says write the fraction in simplest form. Well, the number 6 goes into these. It goes into 18 3 times, and it goes into 30 5 times, 3 over 5. If you didn't know that 6 was the biggest number that went into it, you could have done 3. You could have also gone into it with 2. You just had to have done more steps than that to get to 3 over 5. Number 3 says write 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 using an exponent. Count them up to where you don't make a mistake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 of them. So 3 to the 6th power is writing it using an exponent. Now number 4 is basically doing it in reverse. When it says standard form, you're just writing 5 times what when it shows 5 squared. So you would simply write it as 5 times 5. Some of you guys might have gone further and put it as 25. It's not necessary. Just simply write it as 5 times 5. Number 5 and 6 are really simple. Addition and subtraction. They're simple because they have the same denominators, 12 and 12. 5 plus 8 is 13. You keep that common denominator 12. Make sure there's no number that goes into both 13 and 12. And even though this is improper, it is considered simplified. Same thing with number 6. The bottom number of the denominator is the same, 12, so keep it. 6 minus 3 is the number 3. Now the difference between number 5 and 6 is this one's not finished. It's not simplified. The number 3 goes into both of these numbers. 3 goes into itself once, and it goes into 12 4 times. Now it's simplified, 1 over 4. Number 7 says 3 over 4 plus 5 over 10. Now this is an addition problem that doesn't have the same common denominator, so we have to create the same one. The smallest number that both numbers 4 and 10 go into is the number 20. So if we change both of those denominators or bottom numbers to the number 20, we have to multiply 4 times 5 to get there. So multiply the top number 5 times 3 to get 15. Do the same thing with the other fraction. You have to multiply 10 by the number 2 to get to 20. So multiply the top number by the number 2. 5 times 2 is 10. So what you have now is the same bottom number or denominator, 20. So let's leave it as 20 and add 15 and 10 up, and you get the number 25. Again, this is not considered simplified since the number 5 is a factor of both of these. 5 times 5 is 25, and 5 times 4 is 20. Now it's simplified. Again, even though it is improper, it is simplified. No number goes into both of them. Know also that a correct answer that's possible would be 1 1/4 or 1.25. Each of those would be just as good as what I have in a box. Number 8 says 6 over 10 minus 1 over 3. Again, you have to create a least common denominator. The smallest number that both of these go into is the number 30. So we want to make both of them into the number 30. You multiply 10 by 3, which means you multiply 6 by 3 to get 18. You multiply 3 by 10, so you multiply 1 by 10 to get 10, and it's minus in the middle. You keep that common denominator 30. 18 minus 10 is the number 8. Again, this is not simplified. 2 goes into both of these. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 30 15 times. 4 over 15 is your simplified version. Number 9 says 8 3/4 minus 4 1/4. You can do this 2 different ways. You can convert both of these mixed numbers into improper fractions with a denominator of 4 subtracted that way, or you can subtract the whole numbers 8 minus 4 and get the number 4, and then do 3/4 minus 1/4. Notice they both have the same denominator, just like a couple of problems ago when you have an addition or subtraction problem with the same denominator. So keep that denominator the same, 4, and simply subtract 3 minus 1 to get 2. So don't forget to bring down your whole number. 2 and 2/4, again, not considered simplified because 2/4 can be simplified. The number 2 goes into itself once, and the number 2 goes into 4 twice. 2.5 is the best version of this answer. Again, they were in mixed number form to start, so even if you converted them to improper fractions to work the problem, which is fine, make sure you move it back to mixed numbers to finish it up. Excuse me, everybody, I made a mistake. I actually brought down, for some reason, I brought down 4 and I called it 2. That should be 4, everybody. The fractions were done correctly, though. It should be 4 and 1/2. Make that change. I apologize for that mistake. 4 and 1/2 is the correct answer. Number 10 says 3/6 times 7/10. With multiplication, you could always simplify the fraction. So instead of having 3/6, you can call it 1/2 right there. Or you can multiply straight across and simplify at the end. Either way, you're going to come up with the correct answer. 3 times 7 straight across is 21. And 6 times 10 is 60. See if there's a number that goes into both of those. The number 3 does. It goes into 21 3 times 7, and it goes into 60 3 times 20. There's your simplified version, 7/20. Number 11 says 5/12 divided by 2/8. Again, 5/12. Division becomes multiplication, and you multiply by the second one, you flip it and make it a reciprocal, 8/2. Multiply straight across just like number 10. 5 times 8 is 40. 12 times 2 is 24. The number 4 goes into both of these. It goes into 40 10 times, and it goes into 24 6 times. But notice again, there's another number that goes into both of them. The number 2 does. It goes into 10 5 times, and then into 6 3 times, 5/3. Number 12 says to write as a decimal. First, you have to read it as 2/4. You can read it as 2 divided by 4. 2 divided by 4 would look like this if you did it the long way. You'd have to add a decimal. 2 goes into 4.5 times. So written as a decimal, it'll be 0.5. Writing 13 and 14 as percents, you have to know which digit this is. This is the tenths place right here. This one right here is the hundredths place. So if it says percent, that means per 100. So if you have 63%, then you have 63 per 100, which means 63%. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it, and the way most people do this, they figure out which way to move the decimal. When you're moving it from a percentage to a decimal, you move it to the left 2 places. But when you're going the other way, when you're moving it from a decimal back to a percentage, you move it once, 2 times to the right, and you get the same 63%. Number 14 says 1/5, or again, 1 divided by 5. If you want to look at it that way, you'd have to add a decimal. It goes into 0.2 times. So now you have the decimal 0.2. That was just like number 13. If you use the same rule we used, the second part is you move the decimal 1 time, 2 times to the right, fill in that spot, and you're left with 20%. Another way to do it is to take 1/5 and say, okay, what's percent? What do I have to multiply 5 by to get it to become 100? You multiply it by 20. So you multiply the top number by the same 20, and you get 20, the way it's written here, 20 per 100, which is 20%. Write 60% as a fraction or mixed number in simplest form. Again, 60% means per 100. So 60 per 100 looks like that. You can cancel out 1 0 right off the bat, so you're left with the fraction 6/10, and you could say what a number 2 goes into both of them. It goes into 6 3 times, and into 10 5 times. As a fraction in simplest form, 3/5. Find the greatest common factor. That means a number that you can multiply by both you can multiply and get both of these numbers. Well, look at your factors of 24. 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. And notice the closer you get together with the numbers, that's how you know you can stop, because there's no number between 4 and 6 that's going to multiply and get 24. Right? So look at those numbers and say, which one can I multiply by and get the number 54? Well, you know 24 can't multiply by anything and give you 54. Neither can 12. Check and see if 8 can. 8 times 7 is 56. No, that's too close. That one doesn't work. Check and see if 6 can. 6 times 9 gives you the number 54. Therefore, 6 is your greatest common factor. The least common multiple is when you count by the numbers. These aren't the numbers that go into these numbers, but this is when you actually count by them, like 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and so on and so forth. When you count by tens, you're going to get 10, 20, 30. That's the reason I stopped right there, is because I know we'd get to it sooner rather than later. The number 30 is your least common multiple. Find the perimeter of these two figures. Remember, the perimeter is the distance around it. Secure the perimeter. 31, so the perimeter of a triangle is A plus B plus C. I even wrote it as A, thinking area. Perimeter, A plus B plus C. Neither of these are labeled. Remember, the order of addition doesn't matter. So 31 centimeters plus 18 centimeters plus 25 centimeters. 31 and 18 is 49. 49 and 25 is going to be 74 centimeters is your perimeter. Number 19 says 15 feet and 10 feet. The boxes that represent 90-degree angles tell you that the sides are equivalent that are across from it. So 15 feet and 10 feet respectively. So since they're the same, you could add up. Your perimeter equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Or you could just say 15 plus 10 plus 15 plus 10. When you plug those values in, when you put the two 15s together, you're going to get 30 feet. When you put the two 10s together, you're going to get 20 feet. 30 and 20 together, your perimeter is 50 feet. And two really simple perimeter problems. Number 20 says a car travels 497 miles. That will be our distance. In 8 hours, that will be our time. Find the unit rate. Remember, rate is the same thing as speed. So you're looking for the rate. I still on the board have the formulas written up there for you. I'm going to copy them again on the front board. Rate equals distance over time. So your distance, your rate is going to be the unknown one, or your distance, we said, is 497 miles, and your time, we said, is 8 hours. So you have 497 miles. Again, miles and hours are not going to cancel each other out. When you divide 497 by 8, it's going to give you 61. Your rate is going to be 62.125 miles per hour. The last part says round to the nearest tenth. So all we want to show is one space after the decimal. The number after the 1 tells you either 1's going to stay the same or it's going to round up. Had that 2 been 5 or greater, that 1 would go up and say 62.2. But since it's not, 62.1 miles per hour. You're just dividing the distance by the time. Yes.